Welcome back to the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast here on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and even YouTube. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, go check out the podcast feed there. Having a great week with some episodes, and today I want to continue it as I have another great interview, this one with Bob Fescoe of Fescoe in the Morning on 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City. He joins me to talk about Patrick Mahomes and this awesome start the Kansas City Chiefs are having. That's first, and then after that, I'm going to get into a little bit of the college football rankings and just my overall takeaways from this week's AP poll and what I'm looking at going into this weekend's slate of games. But first, my conversation with Bob Fescoe about Patrick Mahomes and this hot start for the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, so what is the overall feeling surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs right now?
I mean, here in Kansas City, people are ecstatic. We haven't had a quarterback like this in ever, and so people are so excited with the way that he's playing right now and putting up all those points and looking forward to really the first time since 2003 where people can say, hey, maybe this team has some legit Super Bowl aspirations right now.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that with some of these early wins. And just take me back to the beginning of the season. What were the expectations like coming into the season for Mahomes?
Well, I think for Pat Mahomes, I think that coming into the season, we're like, well, if he could throw about 30 touchdown passes and keep it around 10 to 12 interceptions or something like that, I think that's pretty good. I think a lot of people expected the interception number to go up from where it was with Alex Smith. I mean, how could it not? He only had 5 a season ago, and Mahomes is a guy who takes more chances. But through the first 2 games of the season, he's been perfect. He's been brilliant. He's been an unbelievable football player, for this team. And I think he's exceeding everybody's expectations. I don't think anybody, even Andy Reid, had expectations that he would start the season like this. I thought we'd see a lot of really good throws, a lot of really awesome plays, a lot of, wow, he kept that thing alive. But we'd also see some plays where you go, oh, man, we would have had that back and didn't make that throw. But it was all going to be the learning process. And I went into this season, and I've been telling people since May, it's a 32-game season because I think we're going to see some growing pains out of Mahomes. I don't think the defense is going to be all that special. And if they don't make the playoffs, so what? This is kind of a free year to get you to where you need to be in a year from now, and that's competing for the postseason. But I think they've kind of sped that up based on the way Mahomes has played in these first 2 games, beating 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks and 2 potential playoff teams themselves.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when you have a young quarterback like Mahomes, you don't want to expect too much and get too ahead of yourselves. But so far, he's just proved to be, you mentioned a 30-touchdown expectation coming into the year, and he's already a third of the way there, just 2 games in. What has been one of the reasons why Mahomes has been able to produce at such high of a level? What has he been doing that's been so right?
Well, it's really that I think Andy Reid has done a good job of putting him in a position to be successful. And by that, I mean calling the right plays, being a very, very smart regular season head football coach, and also giving him plenty of weapons. I mean, you've got Tyreek Hill, you've got Sammy Watkins, you've got Travis Kelce, you've got Kareem Hunt, who they really even haven't used in the first 2 games of the season. And when you throw so many different weapons out there, he's got so many different options. He can go to number 14. He can go to number 87. He can go to whoever he wants, number 10, number 27. I mean, he's got so many guys that he can look at and go to where, as a young quarterback, most are taking over really bad football teams with no weapons, and they struggle. This guy took over a really good football team that, had 4,000 yards through the air last season, and he's looking, to better that right now. I mean, he's on pace to do better than what they did a season ago, and I think that has to do with the weapons, and I don't think Andy Reid's asking them to do too much. They're keeping the playbook kind of simple for him, and he's just going out there and executing and finding the open guy because you can't cover all of these dudes.
Yeah, you mentioned right there, like how there's so many different weapons on this Kansas City Chiefs offense, and what it brings to my mind is that this seems a little bit more sustainable than you might think. Maybe not, obviously 10 touchdowns through 2 games. That's a very prolific pace, and that can't be sustainable. But overall, do you think Mahomes, for the rest of this season, is it too unrealistic, I guess I would say, to say that he sustains of this a very solid production for the rest of the season?
I think he can, and I don't see why he can't. I mean, he's played against 2 pretty good teams on the road already and has looked brilliant doing it. And I know 80 touchdowns and 0 interceptions is high expectations, and nobody thinks he can continue on that pace. We'll see what happens. I don't think we should be doubting this kid right now about what he can do and what he can't do. And I just think this is different than other teams. I mean, this is like this is the greatest show on turf with a tight end. This is some of the best offenses you've seen with that extra player that a lot of teams didn't have. They got a fairly good offensive line too. So I think right now the sky's the limit, and they're going to have to outscore teams. That's the other thing. They got a defense out there that couldn't stop us and 9 other guys, on a 3-play series. So they're going to have to outscore people. So we may see a lot of quick strikes, and we may see him throwing the football a lot and putting it in the air because they have to make up points and they have to find a way to get the ball in the end zone to kind of counterbalance what the defense is doing.
Yes, certainly. If you look at the first game, they gave up 28 points, second game 37, so the defense certainly has been an area for the Chiefs where it's definitely not been the strongest suit. It's their offense just outscoring teams. But now after these 2 wins, to the Chiefs, is it too unrealistic to say, are the Chiefs the clear favorite in the AFC West?
I think they are right now. I always thought they were going into the season. I mean, people love San Diego, and they always come out of the gate really, really slow. And by the end of September, everybody's going, man, what happened to the Chargers this year? Well, it's the same Charger team that we see every year. Denver right now, even though they're sitting at 2-0, I don't know how good of a football team they are. I don't believe in their head coach, but they really do have a good defense. And I think in Oakland, that's a clown show out there right now. The quarterback is somebody referred to him as an Alex Smith that doesn't have the wins. You've got Gruden, who I don't think is going to make it to Las Vegas. He's kind of a clown himself. And so I think that the fault are the team to beat in the AFC. They've got the best head coach, and right now they've got the kid playing the best quarterback of anybody in the division right now.
Mm-hmm. And now just ending this off, what are some reasonable expectations that you would say are for the Chiefs for the rest of the season?
Well, I said 11-5 coming into this season, and maybe I want to reevaluate it. It's the limit right now. I mean, as long as they keep putting up points like this offensively, they're going to have a tough time losing a lot of these games. I mean, you look at Jacksonville in a couple of weeks and then New England after that. That's going to be a nice test for them. San Francisco may be a little bit of a test this week because they've got a pretty good offense right now that's going to get healthy against this Chiefs defense. But I think if you're going into that Monday night game in 2 weeks against the Denver Broncos, you're sitting at 3-0. You got the possibility to knock them off at the top of the division and be sitting at 4-0 to set up a pretty nice showdown with Jacksonville here at Arrowhead in a couple of weeks and then on the road to New England. So I think that's where we're going to really see what this team is all about. Once we get to about week 7, I think we'll have a really good feel of what this football team's all about.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Where can people check your stuff out at?
You can check it out at 610sports.com, and we have podcasts there. We have downloads there of all of our shows, and so you can see everything you want there at 610sports.com.
Well, thank you so much. I'll definitely have to have you on again, and thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You got it, my man, anytime.
Again, a big thank you to Bob for coming on to the show. Remember to go out and check all of his stuff out. Really awesome radio host out there in Kansas City. And the Chiefs are obviously doing so well this season, so it's a perfect time to listen to him. But now I just want to move over to college football, where the AP rankings have been out for this week for a couple days now. A big weekend in college football upcoming for some teams. Some teams are also taking a little bit of a break off here in week 4. But just want to kind of go through and give some overall feelings I have and some big storylines I'm looking out for coming into this weekend. And I think the perfect place to start, and the only real place to start, would have to be most likely the marquee game this weekend. That is Stanford at Oregon, 8 o'clock Saturday night, number 7 versus number 20. And I think this is going to be a really big opportunity for either one of those teams to start to make a claim for who's the best team in the Pac-12. Because the Pac-12 is a conference right now where it's certainly wide open in a sense, where I don't see one team having the clear advantage over another. Where while Stanford is most likely considered the best of the bunch, there's still some very, very good talent in there. You look at a team in the Pac-12 North. This is Stanford, Washington, and Oregon. That's 3 ranked teams already. Over in the South, not as much talent, no ranked teams right there, but even then, Arizona State has shown some fight in them. Utah has shown some fight in them. Colorado has seemed pretty solid. They're already 3-0 without conference wins. So it's a conference right now where no one is clearly standing out. If Washington had beaten Auburn to start the season, then I think it would be a different story. But as of right now, they didn't get that win, dropping them to 2-1. But they're still a formidable foe in the Pac-12 conference. And I guess now looking forward, for this weekend, Oregon versus Stanford is going to go much into deciding who gets who's leading in the Pac-12, who's the top team in the Pac-12. And when you consider that Washington already has that out-of-conference loss to Auburn, a team that's already now lost to another SEC competition, the Pac-12 has to get their stuff together, because I don't know how much that Auburn loss is going to come back to haunt Washington. Because Washington's a team where if they were to go through and win the Pac-12, they're still going to have that blemish on them where you say, okay, well, they lost to Auburn. And Auburn, at this point, doesn't look like they're going to be, they're among the top of the SEC, but they're already showing some signs of, not being perfect in the SEC, losing to LSU this past weekend. So the Pac-12, at this point, they need a team to kind of rise to the top. We thought Washington was going to be that team, but now that we're starting to see that they have that loss, I'm looking at Stanford as the team that, if the Stanford has issues winning the Pac-12 and they're not able to go far enough with it, and they lose to Oregon or they lose to Washington at some point, it's getting to a dangerous position for the Pac-12 where I'm going to be wondering, are they going to get a team into the playoff? Because while a conference like the Big Ten has seemed kind of off, yes, there's Ohio State and there is very good. Penn State's a top 10 football team. Michigan State, they're good teams. And there's some solid talent throughout. Wisconsin, they just lost. A lot of the other Big Ten teams, they were losing in the non-conference games. So that's starting to look like a conference where I was really high on it coming into this season, but now coming back out of it, wondering, are they as good as we seem? If they're losing all these non-conference games, what's their ceiling? How good can they really be? And that brings up the question now, looking for this college football playoff. The SEC is the top conference, with Alabama being the clear number one team, a team like LSU, who's already rising, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and Auburn. That's just the SEC West. Over in the East, there's a number 2 team in the nation with some other solid competition throughout there with Florida, Kentucky, Missouri. I begin to look at this college football playoff, even though we're just a couple weeks in, where are the teams outside of really the SEC going to come from? And the Big 12, the Big Ten, yes, for the time being they have a clear team, but will it be another situation where they beat each other up, and then you say, okay, well, the Big Ten as a conference isn't that strong because they all lost so many non-conference games? That's a question I might begin to have. Then if you look over to the Pac-12, like I just said, would Stanford, if they're not able to beat Oregon this weekend and Stanford loses a game and Washington and Oregon each have a loss or two and they're the Pac-12 champion, I don't know if you can put them into the college football playoff. And that might be a situation where we're looking over at the Big 12. They have some solid teams, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. Clemson looks like a team that's very much going to likely get in from the ACC. But could the SEC place 2 teams into the top 4? Because if they have a conference champion who, let's say if Alabama is able to run the table, but a team like LSU or a team like Auburn only has 1 or 2 losses, do they start to get consideration, especially if they go through the schedule and they're all kind of getting beat up, or if Alabama runs through the table and Georgia's only loss is to Alabama and they've been winning the rest of the season, how do you hold them out of the college football playoff? So as of right now, I see a lot of different possibilities, a lot of different angles that this season could take. And that Stanford-Oregon game, that's the game I'm watching for this weekend, because I think that could go a long way in deciding how the college football playoff 4 will shape up to be. And with that, that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, check down in the description on either SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or YouTube, wherever you listen to this podcast. You'll find all the show notes there. You'll find links to Bob's stuff, links to my Twitter and Instagram at JacksonNeill20, and links to my other podcast feeds and everything else you could possibly want as well. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you all next time.